So we're looking at the Blake family case study on private wealth. Let's scroll down and read that first question. Question 1, describe two components of a family governance structure that the Blake family could implement to manage family dynamics and decision making. So we'll start reading here. The Blake family has built significant wealth over 3 generations through their family business, Blake Industries, which has become a multi-million-dollar enterprise. The current patriarch, Thomas Blake, has successfully led the business for 30 years. Thomas, now 65, is contemplating retirement and looking to transition leadership to the next generation. He wants to preserve and diversify the family's wealth while supporting the personal goals of his 3 children, David, Sarah, and John. David, the eldest, is deeply involved in Blake Industries, having worked alongside his father for 15 years. He's passionate about maintaining the family legacy and eager to take on the company's leadership. Sarah is more focused on philanthropy, especially in education and environmental initiatives. She believes in using the family's wealth to make a meaningful social impact and is less involved in the business's day-to-day operations. The youngest, John, has entrepreneurial ambitions and plans to start his tech-based venture. While supportive of the family business, John's interest lies in securing the necessary capital and guidance to launch his company. All right, so we've got here the family is considering setting up a family office to manage their wealth, support each member's diverse ambitions, and establish a family governance structure to guide future decision making. Additionally, Thomas seeks to establish a succession plan to smoothly transition business leadership to David while ensuring continued growth and stability for Blake Industries. Okay, so we want to talk about 2 things they could do as a part of this family office or family governance structure. So two main things here. We'll pull in this answer. One is family council. So family council is going to be basically a bunch of different family members coming together as the council, and they're going to oversee all key decisions, and they'll represent diverse interests within the family, allowing for transparent communication and collective decision making. And then family assembly. So this is going to be at some regular interval, they'll have extended family, typically on some regular schedule to keep everyone informed of ongoing developments. So this would be relative to the investment portfolio as well as the business and really just anything affecting the kind of family wealth. Question number 2. Discuss 3 key steps Thomas should take to ensure a smooth leadership transition from Blake Industries to David. Consider training, succession planning, and communication with key stakeholders. So I think we've already read about this. So we have here, seeks to establish a succession plan to smoothly transition business leadership to David. So basically, what do we need to do to transition leadership considering these 3 things? So let's pull in some stuff here. So related to training and development, this is basically going to be ensuring that David has the technical as well as leadership skills needed to perform the job. A formal succession plan related to the second part here provides milestones to move towards overall end goal. Incremental steps along the way ensure smoother transition than an abrupt change. So rather than David just being thrown in as CEO one day, we're giving him more and more responsibilities over time to kind of ease into things for him as well as other people that he'll be working with. And then communication needs to be clear, transparent, keep that trust of current relationships, make sure everyone is aware of kind of these 2 things. So making sure everyone is aware of the training and development going on, as well as that succession plan and what those steps and end goal is. Question 3, discuss 2 advantages and 1 disadvantage of setting up a Blake Family Foundation instead of using donor-advised funds. So we don't need to read anything else here. I'm just going to pull in this answer and start talking through it. So we've got some key advantages here. Well, let's just see. Okay. So key advantages, we need 2 advantages, 1 disadvantage. 1 advantage, control. So the foundation will be more involved with kind of the and work more closely with the specific charities that they're working with, and this may align better with kind of Sarah's goals. And then secondly, family involvement. So these tie in together. So if they're more involved with the charity decisions, the family is naturally going to be more involved. So more control over the project can lead to better family involvement, ensuring the work continues into future generations. And then a disadvantage, this is a kind of the big one. Foundation requires spend of 5% per year, which is what that's going to be for the tax-free status, essentially, of being a foundation. So this might not align with the giving strategy if that kind of minimum is required. And so a couple other advantages is flexibility. So an advantage of the flexibility is you can give grants to individuals and other types of organizations. It doesn't need to be solely given to charities. And then disadvantage, higher costs and complexity, and the information in a foundation also ends up becoming publicly available. So it's going to get rid of some of the privacy of the family's endeavors there. Question 4. Identify the most appropriate allocation option for the family and justify your choice with 3 key reasons. All right, so we left off here. It looks like we're going to be looking at these allocation options, but let's read. We have some objectives here, so that'll be important for our allocation. 1, Thomas has consulted a private wealth manager to assist in addressing the following objectives. Ensure a smooth leadership transition within Blake Industries to David. Diversify the family's wealth. That'll be important to mitigate business-related risks. Develop a governance framework for managing family affairs, including succession planning and conflict resolution. Support Sarah's philanthropic goals. That's going to be important, and John's entrepreneurial ventures. So that's money from this wealth will be funding those goals. So that needs to be taken into account. And then create a long-term strategy for the family's wealth. So we're definitely going to need some growth there. We'll need some shorter-term stuff to kind of fund these two, the philanthropic goals and the entrepreneurial venture. We'll need some long-term money for the philanthropic goals too, since I'm sure there will be some longer-term projects. The Blake family is considering several asset allocation options to diversify their $100 million of wealth. The family seeks to mitigate risks associated with their family business while supporting their diverse individual goals. The following table outlines 4 possible asset allocation strategies. It doesn't say what type of business it is either, which we would normally want to take into account as well. But like, for example, if it was a real estate business, we might not want to actually allocate to real estate. But we don't know that information, so we'll go without it. All right, so I'm going to pull in my answer here, and then we can talk through these allocations. So I ended up going with option B because it is the most balanced portfolio option. So we've got 40% equities, 30% fixed income, 20% real estate, 10% alternatives. So most balanced option provides these benefits: growth in income from public market exposure. So we've got the growth from equities, and then we've got the 30% fixed income, which would be probably be our liquidity source for some of those shorter term goals in philanthropy and the entrepreneurial venture. Then we have the real estate exposure, provides inflation protection and some more income potentially. And then 10% to alts provides some of the high return diversification benefits without giving up too much liquidity. So that's why we went with B. For A, sorry, this should say C as well, and then this should say D. So for option A, this is probably tilted a little bit too much towards growth with public equities at 50%. And then C, probably tilted too much towards fixed income at 40%. We have a lot of longer term goals, so we want to make sure that the portfolio has enough growth in it and is not too risk averse. And then for D, I said 40% in real estate and alternatives. That leaves a pretty significant portion of the portfolio illiquid. It's probably not ideal. And you could also say that 65% in these two that are more income oriented assets, whereas we don't have as much in kind of the more growth oriented, depending on what alternatives is. But assuming there's some private equity and this is public equity, we're pretty limited on our growth here. We are more income oriented. So even just saying that, like, there's a lot of different answers you could have given here. This is just kind of what I came up with. You could probably make the case for pretty much any of these portfolios, honestly, but you have to have solid justifications, and then really articulate why you chose a certain asset allocation option, and provide good reasons. And you probably really can't choose a wrong allocation here. They're all pretty similar for the most part. So there you have it.